We're in a series called The Balancing Act. So some of you were here maybe last week or the previous Sunday as well. But basically, the message this month is about how life requires certain spiritual aspects of life too, but just life in general requires, balancing skills or balancing act. So today I just want to start out just with a simple question, because I want to ask you, maybe looking back at like last few days of your life, or last week or month, when was that moment in your life when you feel like something in your life required a balancing skill or balancing act or balancing moment? Anybody want to give a go? There's lots of areas, right? Obviously, even in areas like finance, let's say, right? Like we have 3 children, and like sometimes they're like always broke, okay? They always need money, always broke, always need cash. So not just about our kids, right? But for most of us, in the financial area of life, it requires, spending, requires, balancing act. So it requires discipline. Any of you want to give a go? What area in your life you feel requires some form of, not just unicycle. We're going to watch a unicycle video again today. Are you getting tired of watching unicycle videos? Anybody? Not yet? Okay, thank you. I'm glad. Anybody like picking up unicycle? Yay? Nay? Not yet. Okay. Okay. That's all right. That's all right. But yeah, what area in your life requires some type of balancing act? Okay, Kevin?
Working and exercising.
Yeah.
Time management.
Yeah. Time. Yeah. Working, exercising, time management. Those are 3 biggies, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. That's tough. Yeah. So it's about time too, right? Managing time. Because again, you said, work, studies, your walk with God. Yes?
Balancing my love for my child.
Yes.
And yet also pushing my child. We're going up to Incheon today and he still hasn't packed.
Okay. That's tough.
Graduated
Yes.
2 weeks ago.
Okay. I sense a little frustration there. Just tiny bit, wee bit. Yeah. So yeah, you wanna, yes, very true. Again, you wanna love on your child, right, or your children. You got to do that as parents, as moms and dads, or grandparents. But at the same time, you got to push them. You got to nudge them. You got to, discipline them. Nudge them, all of that. So anyway, again, I think more of us can share even from maybe this morning since you've been up. There's something, if you think about it, there was an area in your life that required some form of balancing. So it's very common. And maybe it is a skill set, I'm not sure. And we need God's help in this area because time, God-given time, we have to manage. Relational world, God-given people, family, friends that we have to manage. Work, balancing work, studies, all of that, right? So we know, deep down in our heart how, a lot of areas of our life requires this skill. So anyway, so this is our 3rd week into this series called Balancing Act, and we're just going to watch one more unicycle video, all right? It's always fun.
New designers trying to change the pattern. New designers trying to change the pattern. Breaking chains, we setting off that chain reaction. Just chasing dreams, escaping regimes. They make us machines, but we raging against them like won't do what you tell me. No, come through with the bruise like an alchemy. Drug abuse but still living healthy. Found lost but won't lose, now you found me. I'll be sitting on top of the world, watching its troubles unfold. Wondering if there's a God, or do we get here on our own? The things that we don't understand, are the reasons we don't get along. I'm learning the game of life, trying to avoid where many go wrong. Get in my zone, bitch, don't kill my vibe. I'm trying to live and not just survive. Finding my lane, I shift in the drive. No risk and no gain, you willing to ride. Close my intentions and never deprive my seed of nourishment needs. Funny it seems, we all wanna be rich, waiting for money to flourish on trees. Some is the seeds, to some is the sum of all evil. Those who suffer from greed, those the evils rule everything around me. Dream the way that it's always been. Wake up. Wake up.
And if you can ride at that skill level, it's like you're like way up there. But even they fall, right? With dude riding backwards, right? Mountain uni, that's crazy. Mountain unicycle is like a totally another level, okay? Street uni, you know, I do more like street uni. Mountain uni, I can't even begin to tackle because it's just way, way, way out there, right? But I mean, again, just bicycle world, unicycle world, any type of sports pretty much, you know, whether you are a snowboarder or whether you ski, you know, winter sports or whatever it is, it really requires the act of balancing, and it takes time and practice, you know, lots of practice. But so it is the case in our spiritual life, in our relational world, and in other areas of our lives as well. Now, I want to ask you another question. Can you think of a moment or a time when you felt like completely helpless, like completely thrown in the dark? I'm sure you can think about a moment like that, right? When you just, in your life, when you felt like utterly alone, like just beyond yourself, that you couldn't get out of the situation, there's nothing you could do. I mean, we all have moments like that, I think, right? Like I can think of a couple in my life. It's like one time, I may have shared this before, but just real short. I want to share 2 or 3 quick stories, just so that maybe you can think of an example in your own life. We have 3 kids, but one time we went to a zoo, a big zoo in the States, and we lost our youngest child. And just like, in that moment, I was like frozen, you know, because so many people, thousands of people, and there's no way of finding her. We eventually did find her, but in that moment, I felt like completely lost, like out of control. There was nothing I could do in that huge, you know, place in San Diego Zoo. San Diego Zoo is probably one of the biggest zoos in the world. Anyway, so moments like that, you know, you just feel lost. You just feel like you're in complete darkness and all alone, you know, no way out. Sort of deal, right? And there are other moments like that in my life too. And like one time, actually a couple times, but one time it was worse. Some of you know this, but I lost my voice entirely. For like more than 6 months, I couldn't speak. So I went to the doctor and they didn't know what it was. But I literally could not say a thing. And my job is speaking, okay? That's my work, usually. So, you know, some of you teach, right? I mean, if you're a teacher, you have to use your voice. You have to speak. I guess you could teach by writing or some other means, but I mean, generally speaking, we need to use our voice. If you're a singer, you know, same thing. But that was kind of scary. It was a dark moment in my life. It was a very dark period because I didn't know if I was going to get better. I didn't know if I would ever really recover from losing my voice. And it went on for days, and I started getting depressed, and, you know, I didn't want to meet people because, you know, I can't talk to them. I could listen, but I can't talk to them. So it's frustrating, it's upsetting, and it just went on and on. Now I'm okay, thankfully. But that was a very, very dark moment of my life when I felt like, again, all alone. Can you relate? You can, right? And then another time when my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I said, what's up with this, God? That was another dark period of my life. And going back, like to childhood days, I was like, I think I was stupid. I mean, how many of you remember as your childhood moments and you've ever been stupid at least once? Nobody? Okay, 1, 2, okay, thank you, 3. I mean, you won't believe this. And I don't know. These days, I think our washer and dryers are a lot better, so this won't happen. But did you ever hear the story about how if you were to like some kids that go into the refrigerator, 냉장고, and you can't open it from the inside? Is that true? I don't know. It used to be. Now maybe refrigerators work so well in case a kid goes in the refrigerator, they can push it out and it opens. But way back when, refrigerators from the inside, if you're caught inside, you can't open it. You couldn't. I think they fixed that nowadays because we're like smart modernites, right? We're super smart now. But anyway, in those days when I was a little kid, I must have been like 4, maybe 5. I was trying to hide from somebody. And I went into our dryer, of all places. I mean, can you imagine a little kid? I mean, I was like this, and I went inside the dryer. And lo and behold, I started getting like, I couldn't breathe anymore because I was hiding in there, and I was waiting for somebody to come and I was gonna like spook them. Yay, something like that. But then nobody came. The person I wanted to spook didn't show up. So I must have been in there a good 5 minutes. But I had, breathing problems. Stupid, right? I mean, what kid goes in the dryer? How stupid is that? But I did. I went in there. I thought it was fun. I thought I was being cute. I thought I was being funny. But I couldn't get out. It wouldn't push open. I mean, was that a scary moment for me? It was like, because I thought I was going to die. I was a little kid, 4, maybe 5 years old. But eventually somebody found me and opened the door from the outside. And that's the only way I was able to get out. But that was another dark, dark moment of my life. So I think, you can relate. I mean, you can think of your own stories, I'm sure, like that. Maybe in recent days, you've had a moment like that when you felt like all alone. But you know what? We're not alone. Jacob, I mentioned Jacob, I think, last week in the Old Testament. He had a moment like that, right? When he wrestled with God. How about Daniel in the lion's den? You think he felt alone? You think he felt a little pressure? You think he needed the presence of God? A miracle moment? I think so, betcha. What about Paul on the road to Damascus? Yay? I think so. That was probably a dark moment for him. He was completely blinded, right? Jesus also had that moment when he cried out in anguish, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, right? He cried out. The Aramaic phrase translated into English, my God, why have you forsaken me? The Korean equivalent, 주여, 주여, 왜 저를 버리셨나이까, right? Why have you tossed me, like the waste? Can you sense the anguish and the desperation in Jesus' cry during his last few minutes on earth? This is just to say, if you ever feel completely alone or in the darkness, it might be good to remember that others have gone through it too, including Jesus. It sometimes feels as if we're stranded on an island with no one or nowhere to turn to, right? Just dying on the inside. There's a trailer I'm going to show you right now, but we're going to turn off the sound. So you're going to watch this trailer with no sound, just because I'm going to talk about it, about this trailer. This trailer is only probably about a minute long, but the Korean title is 참을 수 없는 존재의 하찮음. There is another film called 참을 수 없는 존재의 가벼움. This is a different film, okay? This is 참을 수 없는 존재의 하찮음. A little different. 2 different movies, okay? The English title of this film is actually kind of two. It could be read impatient, or it could be read I'm patient. But the I am in this movie title is inside a parenthesis. I am. So if you take that out, it just says patient. But if you read it together, it's like impatient. I'm not sure exactly what the film director is trying to communicate, but I think it can read in both ways. And one way to read it is I'm a patient, but another way is to read it is impatient. Translated, life requires patience. Balancing act in life requires long suffering and patience. Because there are certain battles in life we seem to have to fight all alone. At least it feels that way. This film is really about the process of aging, or maybe aging and dying. It's not your typical Hollywood movie, okay? So it's not like really fun or exciting or a lot of action. It's not like that, okay? It's rather slow, reflective, makes you think. It's one of those movies, okay? But it's one of those movies that weighs heavy on your soul and on your heart. Because, you know, every one of us deals with the process of aging, or maybe we have elderly in our family, our family members, aging parents, let's say, or maybe parents that are, immobile, they can't really move around. They're not free to move around on their own. We may have, family members who are terminally ill. They don't necessarily have to be old, but they may be dependent, on somebody, on someone's care. So that's what this film is sort of about. But the central figure, what's interesting is the central figure in this film is himself a physical doctor. Okay, he's a doctor, but he gets sick. He gets terminally ill. And there's nothing he can do. Even as a physician, even as a doctor, there's no way out. So he feels utterly alone, just because, he has family there, he has medical care, he has the nurses, he has the doctors, but what can you do when you're terminally ill? And he feels mistreated in the process. Families there, but they're not really there. Medical care givers are there, but they're not really there. So he feels lost. He feels frustrated. He feels like utterly alone, in utter confusion. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know, a way out. That's kind of like what this film is about. The film is placed in the category of black comedy because it does have some, comic scenes. But, not sure how much of black comedy you normally appreciate. But if you get a chance, I recommend this movie to you as well. But as I see this movie, it's really actually reporting how ugly the world can get in terms of treating the elderly and how utterly helpless the elderly and the terminally ill might feel. They are so often just forgotten. Now, I'm going to slip into my unicycle mode for just a second. Generally speaking, there's no place where you can go to learn how to ride a uni. I think I mentioned this before. There's no hagwon or anything like that, usually. I mean, you have hagwon for math, English, sciences, dance, taekwondo, bowling, boxing, even jump roping, but nothing out there much for learning a unicycle. How unfair, right? But who said life was fair, right? I get it. However, if you practice, just like I've told you in previous weeks, you will eventually learn to move inch by inch. And when you reach that moment, it feels so rewarding and exciting. I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but one of the most important things in learning a unicycle is persistence. Persistence, or stick-to-itiveness, as some people call it. With a bicycle, you either fall to your right or to your left. With a uni, you can fall to your right, to your left, forward, backwards. So it's a little more tricky, might say. But again, it's all still requiring the balancing skill or balancing act. A lot of times, we go through life feeling like we're all alone. Nobody to coach us, nobody to help us, nobody to give us a lending hand. You know, feeling like I'm fighting the battle all by myself. Just like how unicycle has to be learned all alone in most instances. We were not designed to do life alone, but at the same time, there are times in isolation and quiet where we begin to notice God at work in our lives, right? I don't know if you've heard of an author by the name of Morton Kelsey. He's written a book entitled The Other Side of Silence, which is available on Amazon. He's an Anglican pastor or priest, but he talks about the unseen world a lot. The world that we can't see with our physical eyes. Well, one time in his talks, he showed a Bible where he cut out some 7,000 verses from the Bible. Imagine that. He cut them out with scissors just to illustrate his point about how many verses talk about the world that we cannot see with our naked eyes. Interestingly enough, about the third of his Bible that was cut out dealt with things unseen. It's basically the spiritual world. You know, Bible often talks about this, but there were some 7,000 verses in the Bible that talked about this spiritual realm of life that cannot be seen with our physical eyes. But it's real. It's there. It exists, right? I suppose his point was that we seldom have appreciation for that reality. We just don't see it. But you see, the Apostle Paul talks about it too, doesn't he? That our battle isn't really against flesh and blood. So let's check out this passage for today. I want to read this with you. Ephesians 6, verse 12, in the Message version. Can we all read it together out loud? This is no afternoon athletic contest that we'll walk away from and forget about in a couple of hours. This is for keeps, a life or death fight to the finish against the devil and all his angels. So there's a fight going on. The Bible also refers to it as a spiritual battle. And it's an unseen world. We can't quite make it out, but it's there and it's real. And we need God's help because we can't fight this battle alone. And we need a community called a church. We need each other. We need each other's help, assistance, prayer, care, mentoring, right? Because we can't fight this spiritual battle alone. We may feel alone in the darkness, but we're not designed to fight this battle all alone. But it's real, it's there, it's present, because that's what the Bible teaches. A lot of people want to be able to hear the voice of God so that they can practice discernment, right? In our spiritual walk with God. Well, in order to do that, sometimes we have to get alone, however. Alone with God in solitude. From a spiritual perspective, distinguishing the Holy Spirit's voice from Satan's voice is critical because their motivations or intentions are polar opposites with radically different results or ends. For example, let me give you a couple. The Spirit seeks to build up, right? And this is what the Bible teaches, right? Satan aims to tear down. The Spirit encourages reconciliation, right? Wholeness. Satan promotes dissension and division. The Spirit speaks about truth, but Satan tempts with twisted lies and relative half-truths. Without distinguishing the two, we are bound to remain confused and frustrated. A lot of times in these moments, we feel utterly alone. Utterly alone. Sometimes you may feel completely alone. And you may feel, man, how can I get out of this? How can I balance myself in this situation? Right? You feel stuck. you feel maybe frustrated, you may feel even angry because you feel stuck for so long. Well, the good news is sometimes it is in that very aloneness or frustrating moment when you feel like you're just all alone. Sometimes it is in that stillness and solitude you can actually begin to hear the voice of God and feel His very presence. It's kind of ironical, isn't it? So let me just end by saying this before we sing the last song together. Although Christian spirituality isn't meant to be done alone, oftentimes we do need to abandon ourselves to moments of complete solitude and stillness so that we can begin to notice God's work and presence in our lives.